Hey, what is up, everybody? And welcome to Where All the Ladies At. This is Monday, so that means it's a Myth Edition, and we are still in the midst of Black History Month, and that means that we are covering African goddesses. And today, it's a little bit something different. I don't know how people feel about this, but I'm covering a goddess from the Canary Islands. It is. So, she is pretty cool. And my cat's going crazy. I swear to God. Every time. I think she just wants attention. I think so. Anyways, we are covering Chaxiraxi. Chaxiraxi. I think that's how you pronounce it. That's how my pronunciation key says that it is. So that's what we're going to do. And as always, guys, if this is your first time here, my name is Kim. I'm a history nerd. I started this podcast because I really felt like there was a lack of coverage of the ladies. And so I started doing a deep dive trying to figure out where the fuck they all went and found out that they were there. They're just not really talked about. There are tons of women out there that have done amazing things that unless you're looking for them, they don't get any credit. And so that's where this podcast came from. That's why it's called Where All the Ladies At. And I extended it out to myth and legend as well because I feel like even though maybe we get a little bit more play in myth and legend, it's never it doesn't tend to be always good. So that's why I did this. And as I said, we are celebrating Black History Month, and that means that today we are covering African goddesses. On Thursday, we are covering African women, Black women. We've already covered Sister Rosetta Tharpe and Madam C.J. Walker, and this week we are covering Josephine Baker, which is a pretty well-known person, but I wanted to dive into her because I think that there's a lot of things about her that maybe we don't know, or if we do know, it's not really talked about a lot, and that's why I thought I would do her. On top of the fact she is beautiful. Holy crap. Anyways, that's besides the point. If this all sounds cool to you, then you found a really great podcast to add into your repertoire. Before we jump into the sun goddess, I'm going to keep looking in the pronunciation key, guys. Chah-shee-rahk-see. That's a hard one to say. Let's do some typical things. If you want to reach out and have a conversation with me or have a suggestion of lady that you think I should cover, you can do that. There's links in the description box to do that. There's also links to support the podcast, both financially. And if you can't do it financially, if you at least rate, review, share, all that kind of good stuff, that would be much appreciated. There's also links to the Medium publication that goes with this, which has kind of been lacking a little bit lately, guys. I've kind of fallen down on the thing, but it's going to start coming back in March. I will backlog it so you guys get all the information on these amazing Black women. I just got a little overloaded. I was doing some classes and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, so there's a link to that. There's also a link to my other podcast called Our Mystic Road Trip. And that's basically a podcast where I talk about mystical, magical, spiritual, anything from crystals and tarot to mindful eating to ley lines to who knows in the future. Maybe we'll talk about ancient aliens, the theory. I don't know. I just like all that kind of stuff, and I think the more we know, the better, right? My cat. Everybody say hello, mama. Hello, mama. Oh. She's not really possessed. I promise you. She's got the zoomies. She has got the zoomies. Anyways, all right, let's get into it, shall we? So, the indigenous inhabitants of the Canary Islands are called the Guanche. I think that's how you pronounce that. And they have a goddess of the sun, which is very unique. It does happen occasionally. For the most part, in a lot of religions, the sun is the man and the moon is the woman. But in this situation, Chaxiraxi is a lady sun god. Isn't that amazing? I love it. So let's talk about her, right? So she's not just an ordinary goddess, right? By the way, guys, I'm very transparent with everything I do. I am looking at my script because I cannot memorize this stuff. I wish I could. I wish I could, but It just doesn't happen. So I just take a glance at my notes every now and then, right? And I do write scripts, so there's that too. All right, so Chah-shee-rahk-see is the central figure in the spiritual beliefs. The Guanches, the indigenous people of the Canary, revered her as the goddess of the sun, as I said, but she's also seen as a powerful motherhood and fertility, which once again kind of makes sense. The sun you do need sun to grow crops and things like that, which is associated with fertility. So that makes a lot of sense, actually. The sun wasn't to them, to the Guanches, wasn't just a source of light and heat. It was this essential cosmic force that really influenced the everyday aspects. I mean, they're an island, so it kind of makes sense, right? The sun is going to be key there. They live on the Canary Islands, which is an archipelago off the northwest coast of Africa. And they've lived there long before the Spanish colonized, much like many of the other native tribes across the globe. Sorry, my hair is freaking me out. I gotta go get it. Look at that. I gotta go get it cut. I gotta get it cut. Let's do that. Oh, that's kind of cute. I like that. All right, we can do that. Anyways, side note. So their spiritual connection to nature was pretty profound, much like most indigenous tribes, right? They believe that natural forces like the sun, the earth, the sky, all of these were governed by the goddess and gods. So Chaxiraxi, hold on, my cat, hey! What the hell are you doing? I tell you what, she's gone cuckoo, cuckoo. Anyways, they believe that everything was governed by the goddesses, right? And Chaxiraxi, hopefully I say that right, was one of the most significant deities. Unlike a lot of civilizations, ancient-wise, they did not really develop a writing system. So a lot of their stuff is just passed down via word, right? They pass on histories and their beliefs and the mythology all orally. So there's not a lot to be found. That means that much of what we do know about Chaxiraxi comes from later accounts and archaeological findings. What sets her apart is how she's represented. The harmony between the celestial and earthly realms is kind of unique. She was a distant deity in the sky. Her power was something that the Guanches could feel in. The warmth of the sun, right? That's how they knew that she was there. The cycle of the seasons, all of this, you know. She was a nurturer and a protector as well. The sun to the Guanches wasn't just that big glowing ball in the sky, you know, as is a lot of, when it comes to a lot of the older religions. It was a life-giving tool. It was capable of wrath, though, too. You got to think about it from their point of view, like a drought or like any type of climate change. That would seem to them like the gods were pissed off, right? Especially in this situation. She gave life to the land and the crops, and she helped ensure continuation of life. So because the Guanches didn't leave behind the written text like we talked about, our understanding of her role is limited. So we don't have direct, like, original myths. We do know that the Guanches had sacred rituals, some of which, of course, were devoted to the sun goddess. It's believed that they kind of did rituals at certain times of the year, which is very consistent with old world religions and cultures who were nature-based. They lived their lives according to the cycles of the season. It was just how they survived, and it makes perfect sense, right? A lot of the times these rituals would take place in caves or mountaintops or just places where it was kind of looked at as being spiritual and sacred. Now, the name itself, Chaxiraxi, it actually says a lot about the Guanche people and how they... the Guanches didn't have a written language, like we said, right? So there are variations of her name. But despite these variations, the meaning is clear. It means mother of the sun or sun mother. It doesn't... this name kind of points to the role that she had as a cosmic force. The connection between Chaxiraxi and fertility and motherhood and all that is very evident, especially when you look at the one translation, which means sun mother. Just as mother, her warmth was kind of felt just in the heat of the sun, but the plants, the animals, everybody, as I said, it's easy to see why the Guanches saw that, Chaxiraxi's name kind of reveals how respected she was, right? Because here's the thing, in a lot of the older cultures and religions, women, though not really having a lot of like rights and things like that, were very revered because they were the continuation of the tribes. If they didn't have women, there was no children, and therefore the tribe would die out. So they were honored and respected in their own ways, right? Obviously not the way that we think of respect all the time, because women couldn't do a bunch of things. Anyways, Chaxiraxi, as we said, was the god of the sun. She and fertility and motherhood, which also made sense. And I think that that's the biggest thing to know. Beyond the earthly connection, basically Chaxiraxi also had this like connection to cosmic order. The sun rises and sets at a predictable schedule. It rises in the same place. There's a rhythm. It's deeply significant, and because of that, that gave Chaxiraxi a steady presence in the sky, and that means that she was always there. She was more than just a deity. She was a goddess of fertility, a protector, a cosmic harmony, all of these things. So I guess then we can talk about like what she looks like. Now, when it comes to the look, what I'll say is this gets a little bit tricky because they didn't leave behind detailed depictions once again, right? They didn't have a written language or even extensive artwork. Their visual renditions were typically carved into rock or painted on cave walls, and these are materials that don't necessarily stand the test of time. So unfortunately, we don't have what she really looked like. However, scholars have managed to kind of like put together a rough idea what she might have looked like based on surviving artifacts and the look at the people. So the general consensus is that she was like this radiant, almost glowing figure. She would have been depicted as embodying the very energy and light she governed. So like a beautiful woman exuding all this warmth and power, glowing light. Some depictions of Chaxiraxi might even have shown her holding circular disc, which is pretty common when it comes to any type of solar deity. She would have been portrayed as a woman with a strong maternal presence, her face likely filled with light and warmth. Considering her connection to motherhood and fertility protection, it's likely that she would do in nurturing poses, so like cradling a baby, maybe like hands out, that kind of thing. Like cradling the sun, and all that. Other depictions, she could have been shown gesturing towards the earth, and that symbolized her control over that. The idea of Chaxiraxi as a mother figure was central to her identity, so she was probably connected. She was definitely connected to the cycles of life and all that. Beyond her human-like form, Chaxiraxi was also represented through various symbols that reflected her power. So these include like the solar disc, which makes sense, spirals, other geometric shapes, all of which are pretty common actually across the board in a lot of different cultures and old religions. The circular disc, the spirals, those are all pretty common symbols. While there may not be a definitive image of her, she was this figure of immense power, is what we do know. She wasn't just a goddess who lived in the sky. She was nurturing. She really cared, and the Guanches revered the sun for that reason. Worship-wise, like I said, there were rituals, obviously. Of course, we don't know much about them. The Guanches believed that their relationship with her was more than just the sun. It was it's how they survived, right? Without her, their crops wouldn't grow, their families wouldn't thrive, all of these things. So Worship was something that was most likely done on a daily basis. I'm sure there were sacred spaces and religious practices that went on there, caves or hills or whatever. I would assume that where these special places would be as close to the sky as they could get. So that would make sense. Caves is the one there that is kind of odd when you think about it like that, but the Guanches, caves held pretty special significance. They viewed them as realms to, like, portals into the earthly realm and the gods. So it would make sense for them to do rituals there as well. Offerings, of course, are crucial, but typical food, animal sacrifices, pottery, all those kind of things. That's pretty much like on repeat in most rituals of the old world. Specific details about rituals obviously were lost to time because, once again, they didn't have a written language. But the ceremonies likely involved music and dancing. You can kind of take a look at other cultures and see a similarity. There's always dancing, there's always music, there's always food. These are just things that come along, right? Because she was a solar deity, that you might find that there was specials during like solstices and equinoxes, and of course during harvest season because she was in charge of fertility. And I think those would probably be it. Now, archaeological findings is where we get a little bit, right, of our idea of who she was and how she was worshipped. Archaeologists have actually uncovered a lot of really cool remnants that offer some insight. There's definitely no clear definitive image of her, but there's been some pottery and artifacts. Some of those have really shed light on the importance of the sun worship. And these are crucial because without written records, of course, I mean, we just can only go on the physical evidence. And once again, this is why I think archaeologists are superheroes. Among some of the most notable finds are the rock carvings and cave paintings that are scattered across the Canary Islands. And this in particular, this is in places like Tenerife, which is one of the largest, most significant islands. Some of these paintings date back thousands of years. And of course, they often feature the solar symbol, spirals, discs, things of that nature. And of course, therefore, the archaeologists can pretty much assume that these are in reference to Chah-shee-rahk-see. Oh, that's such a hard one to see. And then, in addition to these visual representations, archaeologists have uncovered sacred sites and burial grounds that provide even more evidence that the Guanches really had a devotion to their gods, in particular the solar deity. These sites were strategically located in places that were believed to be in alignment with celestial events. So once again, kind of like Stonehenge and a couple other places, the old people like to, align things with solar situations. Things there that were found like pottery and food offerings, animal remains. And that is all kind of says that this is kind of the common. The positioning of the sacred spaces was not arbitrary. Like I said, they were placed in solar alignments. And these discoveries are important because they provide a little glimpse into, honestly, a culture that, because it doesn't have any written texts, it is so unknown for us, the symbols and sacred spaces, everything shows that there's a deep connection to the sun, and that's important. Also, just as a side note, there has been some, and this is going off script. I did read when I was researching that there was some talk that on the island, when they converted to Christianity, that Chaxiraxi became associated with the Virgin Mother. And so, yeah, that's just something that I read along the way. And it could make sense, right? The Virgin Mary was the mother of Jesus and sign of fertility and safety. And she did have the solar, like the halo over on her head in a lot of pictures. So that could, for the Guanches, kind of correlate to the solar disk. Don't come at me. I'm just saying this is kind of something. I know that it gets really sketchy when when we talk about gods and goddesses becoming associated with Christian iconology, but it's something I did read, and it did make a lot of sense to me that would be the translation. All right, so obviously, guys, there's no written record of Chaxiraxi, so I do have a story that I kind of created in understanding who she was and what she was. Do I think this is not by any means, I want to be very transparent with you guys, a story that is necessarily associated with the Guanches mythology. It's just something that I created so that we could have a little bit of a myth with her in it, and I did utilize the notes and everything I found. So let's give this a try. Once upon a time, the Guanches faced an unimaginable crisis, a devastating drought that stretched on for years. The earth, once lush and fertile, began to crack under the unforgiving sun. Rivers that had once teemed with life were reduced to dry riverbeds, their beds parched and barren. Crops withered in the heat, leaving the people desperate and starving. The community, who had long relied on the earth's bounty for survival, knew they had to act quickly. Their survival depended on the ability to reconnect with the gods, and in particular, Chaxiraxi, the mighty sun goddess. In their darkest hour, they gathered in a sacred space, a place where the earth and heavens seemed to meet, likely atop a hill, where their prayers could reach the skies. The Guanches had long worshipped Chaxiraxi, and with respect and devotion, offering up their finest animals, fruits, and pottery, objects that represented their most treasured resources. The offerings were not just symbols of their reverence. They were hopes wrapped in flesh and stone, prayers made tangible in this. In the center of this sacred space they stood, chanting her name over and over, their voices blending with the wind as they called upon the goddess. Chaxiraxi, they cried, their words filled with yearning, desperation, and faith. Chaxiraxi, who had watched over the people from her celestial realm, heard their cries, and in response she descended from the heavens. As she made her way from the skies to the earth, her presence was as overwhelming as the sun itself. The light that emanated from her was so intense that it seemed as though the very sun was descending to meet the earth. Her radiance stretched across the horizon, and for a moment the world felt as though it was bathed in a golden, eternal glow. The people, humbled by her descent, gazed in awe, knowing their goddess had heard them. With a voice as warm and soothing as the sun's ray, Chaxiraxi spoke to her people. You have honored me with your offerings. Now I shall honor you with mine. Her voice echoed like the soothing warmth of sunlight on the skin, calming, healing, and life-giving. The people listened in reverence, knowing that their goddess words held the power to restore their lives. As soon as she finished speaking, the sun blazed brighter than ever before. Its rays, which had once been harsh and unforgiving, now filled the sky with a vibrant energy that seemed to pulse with life. And with the sun's renewed intensity came the long-awaited rain. The parched earth drank deeply as the heavens opened, releasing a gentle, nourishing rain that flowed like a blessing upon the land. The crops, which had once been dried and shriveled, began to green and sprout, bursting with new life. The rivers, too, began to flow again, their waters rushing with newfound vigor, bringing life back to the land. The people rejoiced in unison, knowing that their prayers had been answered, and that Chaxiraxi's blessing had saved them from certain destruction. The fields would flourish once more, and the community would survive. They celebrated with dancing and feasting, giving thanks to the goddess who had heard their plea and returned the gift of life. Chaxiraxi, in her infinite grace, had shown them that even in the darkest of times, hope could be restored by the power of the sun and the nurturing force of the earth. The people, humbled and grateful, vowed to continue honoring her, knowing that their survival was forever intertwined with her divine protection. And there it is, guys. That's Chaxiraxi, powerful sun goddess. Once again, not a typical thing of the Guanches. She was more than just the solar goddess. She was the heart and soul of a very, very spiritual practice on the Canary Islands with the Guanches. And yeah, that's it. I've never been to the Canary Islands. I kind of want to go. I've seen beautiful pictures, and this makes me want to go see it a little bit more. A lot of my travels, guys, I'm going to start traveling again. I've seen some amazing things, but a lot of my travels do have to do with, like, I like to visit, like, temples and mythological places and all that kind of stuff. I'm a huge nerd, guys. I told you guys, I'm so nerdy. Anyways, that is where all the ladies at. Myth edition for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a little veer off. It's still part of Africa, but it's not necessarily what you may think of. And there wasn't a lot to be found, so of course it's maybe not as long as I would like it to be. But still, I hope it inspired you to kind of check it out, see what's going on with Chaxiraxi, and also keep checking out African mythology, man. It's some interesting stuff. It's something that I don't think a lot of us look into. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Happy Black History Month. And make sure you tune in on Thursday for my episode on Josephine Baker. And if you haven't heard Sister Rosetta Tharpe or Madam C.J. Walker, make sure you go back and check those out too. I want to make sure we're celebrating the ladies, the Black ladies that have really done some amazing things for this world. So check it out. And once again, guys, I don't want to be political, but in this day and age, I think it's very, very important that we give people their due and we celebrate the history. And so, as always, like I say, no matter what anybody says, I'm going to celebrate Black History Month. Next month, I'm going to celebrate Women's History Month. And I think it's May, I'm going to celebrate Asian Pacific Islander Month. And in June, I'm going to celebrate Pride. And that includes LGBTQIA and everybody else in the community. All right? So if that's something you're into and you're down with that, then please stick around. Make sure you check out my social media too. I have Instagram and I have TikTok. For now, at least. And yeah, and I also have a YouTube channel. So if you want to see the mug that is telling you about all these cool people, make sure you check it out as well. There's links in the description box to all of that. There's also links to my Medium publication, which, as I said in the beginning, will start being back to the way it was. And also a link to my other podcast, which is called Our Mystic Road Trip, where I talk about spiritual, mystical, magical kind of things. And everything that people would put under that woo-woo umbrella. And that includes maybe some talk about cryptids, maybe some talk about ley lines, maybe, alternate universes. Who knows in the future what I'm going to get up to. But definitely things on crystals, tarot, and all that kind of good stuff. All right? So if that sounds cool, check it out too. As always, guys, I hope I inspired you to check out and try to figure out where all the ladies went right along with me. If you ever have any suggestions, as always, please make sure you hit me up on social media. And that's it for this week, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you Thursday for Josephine Baker.